Hello, everyone. Here with Leigh Ellis. Leigh is a basketball junkie, has taken his love for the game, and is now traveling the world, finding the best pickup games. Leigh, I love your stuff. Saw you on Instagram, was an immediate fan because it's fun, and basketball's fun, and you're showing the fun side of basketball. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks very much for having me, Kevin. And you're absolutely right. That's primarily what I'm doing is having fun and showing how basketball is a connector like that. You know, I mean, many sports are and many sports can be, but basketball is the one for me that has been a big part of my life, and it's taught me so many lessons. And so now I'm trying to combine, you know, what I've learned from basketball, playing basketball, having fun with traveling, and trying to explore that and turn it into a series, hopefully.
Yes, I think it's incredible. Now, the big question is, we always talk about the why. Like, there's a reason that this began. There's a reason this started. What was the reason that started this whole entire journey of just checking out different overseas or different basketball pickup games from around the world?
Yeah, well, I've always been a big basketball fan ever since I was a little kid, and I've always been a big fan of traveling. You know, I've lived in. The funny thing is, I went backpacking from Australia as a 22-year-old 25 years ago, so I'm sort of aging myself there. But I went out on that original backpacking trip, not knowing really how long I'm going to be away for. I thought, you know what, I didn't tell anyone this, but I thought after probably 6 weeks, I'm going to get a bit homesick and I'll probably, you know, go back to Australia because that's where I was from. I had my friends, my family, I had stable life and a stable job. But once I sort of got the taste for traveling and living in Europe and seeing just how close you are to the rest of the world, it sort of took me down this path that I still don't really know where I'm going or what I'm doing, but I just love the exploration and going to cities and countries that I've never been to before, you know, eating food and meeting people and just, you know, exploring. And it's so cool. And this idea of going around playing basketball kind of forced itself on me. You know, I had a very stable job, again, working at producing and hosting an NBA podcast, which was great. But what happened was about 2 years ago now, just over 2 years ago, we were still kind of pandemic times and things like that, and people weren't traveling. And my wife and I, we got vaccinated, and we were like, right, if we can't do anything now, then we'll never do anything. So we decided, let's get out, let's go traveling. And so we went to Europe, and I was in Germany. I was in Berlin at a flea market on a Sunday afternoon. And I saw these guys playing on this court. And if you've ever been to Germany, their pickup courts, really cool, but they are built to last forever. So these rims are as solid as anything. Chain nets, really solid backboards. These things aren't going anywhere for like 100 years, right? So really nice and strong and sturdy. Not actually great to play on, because if you're not swishing that ball's blanking out, right? Anyway, so I saw these guys playing, and we just had lunch, and I was wearing like a button-up shirt, and I said to my wife, I'm just going to get a few shots up with these guys. And then there was three guys there. We started playing 2-on-2. My son, who was 8 at the time, he just started filming it. I didn't ask him to do it, but he just started filming it. And then after the run, I put those clips up on Instagram, and there's no storytelling behind it. It's just, hey, here's a play, here's another play, here's another play. And my audience just loved it. They were like, "Oh my God, this is so cool, man. Like, come to my city, come to my country. You know, I'll take you around. I'll show you the best courts in the city and stuff." And I didn't really think too much of it. And then the following year, so last year, now 2022, we went away again in the school holiday summer months. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to test this theory out that I've got. This idea started to sort of, you know, form. And I was like, right, I was in Cairo, we're in Egypt actually, and we were coming back via Rome. And I said, if anyone knows of any pickup runs in Rome, let me know. I'm going to be there. And it was probably at the time my most engaged story that I posted on Instagram. But the funny thing was, no one from Rome said, yep, I've got a court, come here, come there. People from everywhere else in the world, you know, from Tokyo to Brazil to Croatia, everywhere is like, you know, come this court. And I'm sort of like going to my wife, like, this is crazy. Like, I love all this, but I want to go and play in Rome. Anyway, one guy said, well, if you're in Barcelona, come and play. And as it turned out, we're actually stopping in Barcelona too on the way back. And so I connected with him. And the funny thing was, I don't think he was expecting me to respond, because I said, all right, I'm going to be there. Can you get the game? And he's like, oh, we actually ran last night. I don't know if my guys are up for another run, a night or two later. And I said, well, just tell me the court. I'll go there anyway. He got a few guys and we went out and played. And the same thing, I put those clips up and I just couldn't believe how many people started messaging me and saying, man, we've got the best courts. We've got the best run. Like, we'll take care of you. You'll get to eat this food and all this. And so I just, that's the thing, like these ideas kind of like they grow on you and you start to thinking like, I can't ignore this. I've got to sort of, scratch that itch. And so I started talking to my wife and I said, why don't I try it? I mean, no one's going to say to me like, yeah, leave your job and go and play pickup basketball. That's a great idea. No one's going to say that to you, but you can't, you can't live like that either. You have to roll the dice. And,
Yeah.
And so, once my wife, I mean, again, she was the one, once she was on board, it was like, well, that's the only person who really matters. And I mean, we all have friends and family and things like that, but your partner is the one that, if they support it, then you're like, right, I've got a chance here to do this. And so I did. And so I started in November of 2022 and, yeah, it's been the most incredible experience I could have possibly, I mean, not even imagined. I mean, because you can't imagine these things turning out the way they are. You just have to sort of go for it and see what happens.
Well, I always think the most remarkable thing about traveling, it's you obviously see the locations and you see places that you've seen on TV, but the biggest thing is the people and your interaction with all of these people that you're doing. You're putting it up. I'm going to be here, and you're having these interactions where it's just not the game. It's like you'll go to the game, but then you'll hang out afterwards. You'll almost get like a tour guide for the places you're going because through basketball, just being like, hey, I'm playing here. Then they're going to almost take you under your wing. I think that's so fascinating. And that's something that people don't really think of. It's not just the basketball. You're getting this experience of meeting these incredible people after a time where we were all kind of sequestered and locked away. And now it's like you're out there meeting all these new people. And that's just inspirational to the people who are those extroverts out there who are like, I want to get out and go. I want to get out and go. And I think that's why your content resonates so well with all of those people.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is everyone's really proud of where they're from and they want to show off their city, So people are like, well, if you're coming to my city, I want you to leave with a really good feeling about being there, because we all make fun of our little rivalries within our, communities and our cities and countries and things like that. For example, people from London will pick on people from Manchester and vice versa, like, oh, it's the weather's bad up there, the food's crap there, whatever it is. But when someone is, coming to your city, you're like, I want this person to be like, man, I had a great experience. So they do. They say, you want to try this food? You want to come to this bar? You want to go here? You want to go there? And that is also for me what a huge part of traveling is. You mentioned the people. 100%, I agree with that. I would say after that, it is the sort of culinary experience, because you go into places where people are like, this is what we eat. I was in Mexico City. I was eating grasshopper a couple of weeks ago because that's what my friend who was there, like, this is what we eat here, and I was like, give me a grasshopper. I'm going to grass. You're not picking it off the ground and throwing it into your mouth and it's jumping around. They're sauteed in a saucepan first. And to be honest, they don't taste anything different to sort of some potato chips or something. If you didn't know what you're putting in your mouth, you would just think it was a different potato chip. So, but those are also the experience that I believe really enrich you as a person and help you learn and grow, because you realize, you just mentioned it, for a year or two, whatever we were there, we weren't allowed to even, be in the same room as other people. And now you realize that human interaction is so important to our own health, mentally and emotionally, because you need to be around people and you need to talk and you need to learn and you need to play and laugh and all those things. And for me, I've found that has really started through basketball. And that's where it's like, yeah, this feels awesome, because I'm getting to play basketball in these cities and countries with people who don't know me. We don't speak the same language. But once you step on that basketball court, that becomes the language of its own. And so I just really enjoy, how I feel attitude is so important to what you do in life. And I turn up and I'm like, I'm not here to try to embarrass anyone or put my rules into the game. I'm here to play by your rules, the way that you guys play, and basically just have some fun. And it really does give you that feeling again that I think we have missed in the last few years, where it's like mostly people are cool. Most of us are more or less the same. We'll have our differences of opinions, of course, But for the most part, we just want to have a good time, have some fun, have some laughs, and that's really what it comes down to.
The biggest thing is trying to figure out where to go. Are you basing where you're traveling based on the destination, or are you basing it on what you've heard about the local, the games, the basketball scene? How are you picking the destinations that you are attending?
So I really just go through Instagram and the people who have messaged me and said, hey, if you need help, I can help you organize a run here. And I will look at the feasibility of it, the location, whether or not I can get there, the costs and things like that. And then sort of make a determination from there, because I don't want to be away from my family for weeks on end or anything like that. I'm a father of 2 boys and a husband, so my family is first. So I try to make it in a way where it's like, okay, I can be in this city or country for 4 or 5 days, like I was in Mexico City recently. That's a pretty easy one to get to. Whereas when I went to Africa, it's no good going to Kenya for 3 days and then coming home. You may as well, explore it a bit more. So I try to find places I've never been to before. And then I try to hit 2 or 3 countries within that sort of, 10 to 12 day span, if possible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but mainly it's encouraged by how enthusiastic the invitation is as well. Because I think some people say, hey, come to this place, and they don't actually expect me to follow up on it, but I will. And then they're like, oh, I've had a few people say that, like I don't know, Montreal, hey, come to Montreal. I'll take care of everything. And I'm going, okay, I want to come. And they're like, oh, never heard from again, Yeah. But then, there's been other people like the people in Manila who said, hey, come on out to Manila. We have this huge event. We'll bring you out here and you can play and have some fun. And I said, let's do it, and that, and that, the funny thing about that trip was I was supposed to go via South Korea, just because I live in Atlanta. So, there's no direct flight between here and the Philippines. So I was going via South Korea, but the flight on the night I was supposed to go got canceled because there was a typhoon. So I was like, oh my God, like this is, this is frustrating. I mean, a typhoon has significant impact on people's lives, of course. So I don't want to sort of brush it off, but
yes.
it's one of those things. I was at the airport, they were boarding the plane and they said flight's cancelled, and I'm like, so I thought that trip was going to fall through. Turns out I got on that flight and I made it to Manila and I had a great time. But because the flight got cancelled, the return flight got cancelled. So they had to find a different flight for me, which was via Tokyo. And I was like, okay, that's fine. I can have 12 hours in Tokyo. And I did. And I found a court and I had an incredible run there. Like, so this sort of like unpredictability, unplanned, just go with the flow. I embrace that when it comes to traveling, because I'm sure you've traveled with people who like a minute by minute itinerary of every single thing. Now, if something goes wrong, and it always does when you travel, if you're with those people who can't handle that sort of that unplanned change to their itinerary, they can be tough to travel with. But I've found that the best people I travel with over the years, who are just the ones who are like, we have an idea of what we want to do. But if life just sort of says, no, we're going down this path, then you don't resist. You just say, all right, here we go. And that's what happened in Tokyo. I was only there. I was technically there for 18 hours, but I slept for the first 6. And then I had a 12-hour day in Tokyo and, got some really good content out of it. So I was just so happy. And I just love living my life in that format where it's just like, you don't know what's going to happen, but just go out there and give it a shot.
No, it's an incredible experience, because I have a good friend who does, and I don't know if I could do this. I mean, I traveled and played basketball a lot, but everything was like itinerized, but I had to go there and kind of figure it out myself. But then I kind of created a schedule. But he'll travel once a year to like a different place, different state, different country. And it's called no phones, no maps. So He goes, he puts his phone away. They all put their phone in a box, lock it up, put it in a suitcase, and then they fly. And there's no maps, there's no nothing. Wow. And he just goes. And he said, you get in the airport and you're like, hey, what's the best hotel to stay at? And they have no itinerary, no plan. And he just goes. And I always envied that, because I was like, wow, you really find out so much more about the country when it's completely organized and chaos, and that chaos creates this more this tighter bond with the country that you're in, because you're just trying to figure it out grassroots. You have to find people to talk to, you have to find people who speak the language. It's such a phenomenal thing to do once a year, to just kind of almost reset your mind. And it seems like you have the itinerary, but at the same time you have that chaos that creeps in, and that chaos becomes really a basis for why everything's so cool that you're doing, is because that chaos gets thrown in. You're like, I guess I'm gonna go here and play. I guess I'm gonna figure this out.
You know, you learn about the country, as you mentioned, but you learn so much about yourself too. You know, you just learn how you deal with adversity, and you deal with that. Like, you know, you go to a hotel, no, the hotel's full. Like one time, for example, I was in 22 or something like that. I was in Italy, and this was before we all had smartphones and things like that. We had the internet, but certainly not as convenient as it is now. And I turned up in Rome on a Saturday in June, and I went to this youth hostel, you know, and I got there, and there was literally 1,000 people trying to get into this youth hostel. And I'm just like, oh my God, you know, you just hate yourself. You hate the world at that moment. Anyway, so I left this hostel, and I just started walking down the street, just, you know, don't know what I was doing or thinking. And this old lady, probably 80 years old, just comes up to me and she goes, need room. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah. And she, yeah, no, come. And I'm like, oh, what am I doing? What's she doing here? You know, anyway, she went, and in Rome, they've got all these old gated communities and things like that, huge gates that lead to the houses in the background there. And she pressed the buttons, and she had a conversation with somebody, and she said, room in here. And I'm like, all right, I might be getting murdered here, or I might be getting a room. I'm not sure exactly what's going to happen. Anyway,
50-50.
It's 50-50. And then it was a family. This was, again, before Airbnb, but they basically Airbnb'd me a room for like 4 or 5 nights. It was, you know, probably $20 a night. And I was just living in their house. The dog would come into the bedroom in the morning. You know, the kids were sort of just off doing their own thing. And, you know, but again, that speaks to how, like, that experience is something I remember now, 20 plus years later, than I would have remembered just staying in a hostel, you know, where it's the same sort of stuff. And so that spontaneity really appeals to me, because you can't possibly plan those things. There's no way you can be like, I'm just going to try to run into an old lady on the street, you know, and she's going to take me there. You know, and so I think, like what you're talking about there with your friend, I think that's very much the same mentality of like, let's go there and figure it out. And I think, you know, you think about even when you're going through in your sort of teen years and your early 20s with your buddies, and someone says, hey, there's going to be a huge party at so-and-so's house, and you go there, and it's kind of a, you know, it's kind of a flop. But then there's those other nights where, you know, you might be just sitting on the couch, and your buddy's like, you want to go to a bar or whatever? And like, yeah, sure. And you have the wildest night of your life, you know, because you just don't know what was going to happen, but you go there with that open mindset. And so that's how so much of this is for me, where it's like, you know, have an idea, you know, have a couple of flights booked here and there, but if something takes you down a different path, go there. And the videos that I've had that have had, you know, the most traction have been the ones that I couldn't have planned for. The ones where I played pickup with these Russian guys in Belgrade who just were there. I was wearing jeans and a sweater, and they were just there, and they said, hey, we need another one. You're playing. We're going 2-on-2. Then there was the guy in Croatia, the 65-year-old guy, who's just a bucket machine. You know, like, I didn't plan that one either.
Was he a shooter? I feel like old guys, just, if you know how to shoot and you're an old guy, you're gonna last a long time on the pickup courts.
You know, and like, I complain like most of us do, like, I feel, my back's hurt and my legs hurt. This guy's 65 on a Monday night, and he was just out there like, I'm just getting buckets. I don't care. And so it inspires you. You're like, yeah, what am I complaining about? And but again, like, so the content that I sort of, and I, you know, document a lot of things where I'm like, I want to do this, I want to do that. And I was looking through it the other day, actually, about the ideas that I had. I did like one of those ideas of the sort of 12 to 15 that I had. But the other ideas or the other content that just came out of it was the stuff that did the best. And I'm like, so that sort of reinforces my own belief that, you know, plan some things, but man, just turn up and see what happens.
It's very inspiring, because it really is. It's a great, I'm loving this conversation just because of the different layers that we're able to kind of uncover. And the biggest layer is the basketball. So when in your travels, where's the best pickup? If someone's listening to this podcast and they're like, I want to get to the best pickup game, where have you found so far that has been the best?
I mean, it's a really tough question, because I would say in Cape Town, South Africa, they had probably the most collection of really good ballers there.
Okay.
Youngish men. I say youngish because everyone feels youngish when you're in your 40s. Probably 25. But then in Nairobi, in Kenya, I mean, guys were throwing down putback dunks.
Wow.
And he was hitting his head like this afterwards, like to the guy. In Manila, in the Philippines, I played in an celebrity all-star game, and that had brought together some of the local, celebrities, and then local really good basketball players, men and women. And again, like, the women out there were as tough as anything. There was no like, oh, well, it's a female, we'll go easy. They were driving into the paint. They're getting in on the ball on defense. They're boxing out, and things like that. And then even in London, in England, I had a run there, and there were these young kids who weren't part of the run, but they saw what we were doing. This 20-year-old kid, he's probably 6'5", Enel, his name was. He just started coming down and throwing down massive two-handers, dunks off the bounce. So, I mean, everywhere I've been, and then in Tokyo, this guy Toshiro, he was like Jason Williams out there, white chocolate. He was, man, his handles were incredible. So it's one of those funny things that I would love to sort of someday somehow compile, like a World Cup of the dudes that I've played with and against, because I know that would have so much fun, because everyone would think, oh, we're going to win this tournament. We're going to win. And I would be like, I would be the only one who would probably have a real idea of who's, where the best players are and where the best team is. But it would just be so much fun, because a street ball pickup basketball World Cup, that to me would just be amazing. The guys in Serbia, for example, and in Croatia, they've easily had the best ball movement. Like, that ball just zips around. It's like in an old pinball machine where it just a boom, boom, doof, 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 like that. So athletically, they're probably not on the same level as some of the other guys that I've played against. But again, basketball isn't only about who the strongest and the fastest and who can jump the highest, who can move the ball, who knows how to play. So it's a really fascinating sort of idea. But I haven't been anywhere where I'm like, wow, this sucks. And not, because again, I'm not there trying to, to me, it's about fun and playing. And so, like in Zagreb, in one of the games I played, it was really wet and slippery on the surface. The same in Istanbul. And so it just made it a little bit harder, because everyone's trying to keep their feet. And the last thing I want is anyone to injure themselves or anything along the way. Again, coming back to what I was saying before about when people are proud of where they're from, again, a lot of people say, oh, great to meet you, and all that. Once the game starts, then it's like, right, we're playing, man. And again, that's what I love. I love competitive but fun basketball. No one's like, that no one's fighting over a foul call and calling travels and things like that. It's like, just compete or having fun, and then after the fun, let's go and have a beer and talk about it.
It's great to hear about you describing the different styles of basketball that exist around the world. And we have a lot of overseas basketball players that come on, and we've talked about, when you're playing in Europe, it's very different than when I was playing in Australia, and it's different than when I was playing in South Korea. It's like every little game has their own nuance. So when you're describing Serbia and Croatia moving the ball well, and just like the intangibles that certain countries have and the style of play that they have, and it's represented all the way through. It's represented on the professional level. It's represented with the guys that you see come over in the NBA, but it's represented on those small time, the courts and the streets, and that's what makes basketball fun. Because you had talked about how it's basketball's staying. I just read an article. It talked about all the different sports and how some sports are really dipping. They're losing a lot of youth numbers, and how basketball is staying very even, because it's just, I guess it's a global game, but at the same time, it's something that, like you're saying, you can go to a court and just pick up a game. And it's very tough to do that in other sports. Basketball is that, it's hard to do, play baseball and, soccer, you need all these other people and nets and things like that. Basketball, you go to a court, you get a ball, you'll find people. And that's what I love about the game. And that's why I think it's just staying relevant and staying incredible. And you describing it in that level is it's really cool. It's fun to see that basketball is still this really popular sport all over the world, and it's still continuing to be that way just by the fact that you're always going to find a game. You'll go somewhere, you'll find a court, you'll find a game.
And even if you're by yourself, you can get a good workout in, you know, like because that's what basketball has taught me, that even when I shoot around by myself, I get frustrated if I miss 4 or 5 shots in a row. You're like, what are you doing, man? I hate, like, focus, you know, and then you work on maybe a little left-handed floater, or maybe you work on a step back, or maybe you do something. It doesn't matter. It's like you're working hard because you're the one who's going to benefit from it. And that to me is honestly like meditation as well. I've said this to my wife. I said, the craziest thing is when I'm out on the court shooting and playing, I feel sometimes like it's having such an emotional impact on my sort of mindset and my health, because I'm like, this game just teaches me every single time I'm out there, like, get your feet straight, like bend your elbow, focus on the follow through, all those little disciplines that just sort of keep you on that, like, it's almost like a balance beam of like mental and emotional health in that sense, where you're like, if you're shooting well and you're playing well, you know that like your life is in order. If you're distracted and you're missing shots and you're going crazy, there's something going on that you need to address. So it's great like that. But also from the global sense, the most awesome thing about basketball is it's really for boys and girls too. And that, again, not to disparage any other sport. I mean, anyone can play any other sport. But what I have really noticed a lot more is how basketball is for artists. Like, so many guys are either like, I'm going to hit these crazy 3-pointers, or they're going to be like, watch my handle and I can do all this stuff, or they've got these crazy layups that they've, where they put a lot of backspin that goes off. Either way, like, it's a real expression of your personality and your creativity. And that's what I love about it. Like I mentioned the guy in Zagreb, Shooter, the old guy, just incredible. Didn't have any handles on him at all. In Tokyo, Toshiro, sick handles. Like, just like, I was just like, yeah, I just wanted him to have the ball in his hand the whole time and just watch what he can do. He could also shoot, mind you. So he had a pretty complete package. And then even in Iceland, a guy I played with up there, Siggy, good. He could shoot. Not a great athlete, but he was really passionate and entertaining on the court. One of those guys who's like, you're not quite sure where he's going, what he's going to do, but he could hit this crazy shot or hit a 3-pointer. So really fun to play with. And that's what I love about basketball, is it feels to me like everyone's like some sort of artist, and they're going to show you something. And, I'm sure you've done it as well. You play against guys who've got an ugly shot, but it's effective. And you're just like, oh, how does this guy's shot keep going in, but they've got this funky sort of 2-hand style, whatever it is, and it just goes in every time. And you're like, I just can't play against this guy because I'm standing here, I'm in his face, he's only small, but he throws the ball up and it goes in every time. And it's just like, this guy's just shot that shot a billion times in his life, and he's figured out a way that works for him.
I love the psychological aspects you mentioned of basketball, because it really is true. Like, you're having a bad day, you can see it on the court. It doesn't have to. They talk about that all the time. Like, athletes, you have a bad day and you're not performing up to what your standard is. But there's so many factors. Like, when we talk about people who aren't in that realm, it's like, well, you could have had a bad day at work, but came home and no one really noticed. Everyone's going to notice when you have a bad day and when you're in that realm, but it is refreshing and it is positive, and it's such a stress reliever. I have a bad knee. I'm getting it replaced next month, but still, like, I'll go into a court and it's like, I feel like home, and I'll just shoot and shoot and shoot. And just like gives you those feelings of like that calming presence. And that's what I love. And that's why I love basketball. And that's why I love this whole entire story. But the craziest thing that I have to ask you, or not the craziest, but one of the most important things I have to ask you is, you talked about, the head tap and things like that. How is the trash talk when you are traveling the world? And is it in English majority? What is the trash talk like when you're heading all over the world?
I mean, it's probably not anywhere near as much as it is when I'm not playing, because I think, again, people are trying to be polite and things like that. But look, definitely some of the other guys have kind of got into it a little bit. People, because it's a natural part of the game as well. And look, I'm all for trash talk. I think trash talk is an important part of the culture, but we all know where the line is, and we all know where it sort of extends beyond that. And that's what I don't like. Like have fun for sure, be clever with your trash talk, but make sure that you're not ending any friendships or relationships over a meaningless game of pickup basketball, because I've seen guys nearly come to blows over a game of pickup basketball in mainly sort of America or Canada, and I'm like, this is not what we're doing it for, guys. No one's going to the NBA. If you're playing with me, you're not going to the NBA. I don't want to break it to you. I mean, I love the game. I'm an okay player. I can shoot. But this is not like maybe if we get spotted in one of Leigh's videos, a scout will sign us or anything like that. So you got to know your strengths there and know who you are. But that's a part of it for me as well. That the language side of it is, I try to pick up little words as I'm going, because a lot of the people I play with don't speak English themselves, or maybe it's their second or third language. And so it's no good me out there trying to make calls and plays, like screen, go under, no, go over, don't, if they're like, what the hell's this guy talking about? So, so much of that is trying to understand what they say and how they communicate with each other, and then trying to incorporate it, and also trying to not, accidentally insult someone at the same time, because, if you pick up the wrong word or you say it the wrong way, you might all have someone coming after you. But, it's all good fun, and again, that's the sort of experience of that. I love that feeling of, you're a little bit uncomfortable, because you're like, what is this person going to think? How am I going to speak to them? And that uncomfortable feeling is something I actually embrace, because again, it comes back to what we were saying before. It tests you out, and you learn about yourself and how you handle those situations.
When we talked about the trash talk, the fouls, how easy is it to get fouls? Are you calling your own? Are they calling it? There's all kinds of rules. What is the universal rule for fouls? Is it like you just call your own, or guys calling it for you? Yeah. What's that universal rule that you've noticed?
No, it's pretty much guys call their own. And for me, I rarely go into the paint, so I'm not getting fouled. I'm just shooting 3-pointers. But look, no doubt I've committed a few fouls myself. And if there's a clear sort of skin sort of slap like that, then no one really complains about it. So, but I would say, again, for the most part, people have been really reasonable about that. Like, no one's, when the game's on the line, if we're having if it's up to 11 or 15 or whatever, like, we haven't had one of those arguments that goes on for hours about whether or not it was a foul or whatever like that. So most people generally seem to be of the opinion, like, it was a foul. Now, when it comes to travels, that's somewhat of a different story, because a Euro step in Europe is, I mean, we all sort of assume a Euro step is sort of a gigantic leap one way and then sort of back the other way. But sometimes I've played in Europe and I'm like, okay, that dude took 5 steps then. What's going on?
There's a whole lot of stuff going on right there.
So that, and the guy who gets called for travel by his friends obviously never thinks he travels.
Oh yeah.
But that again, I think that's more just a universal thing, that no one thinks they foul, no one thinks they travel.
Yeah.
So but that's the funniest thing. But there's been a few other little sort of quirky rules, like in Croatia, for example. I've never played this way before, where if I'm an offense and I shoot and I miss, the other team, if they rebound it, automatically has to sort of at least check it to the 3-point line before they can put up the shot. But in Croatia, once I missed the shot, if they rebounded, it was sort of a live ball and they could put it up and in. So there was no checking or clearing of the ball, I should say, rather than checking it. But, that's something you have to get used to. And then I, for the most part, play make it, take it. So, if you score, you keep the ball. But in Serbia, for example, it wasn't that way. It was like, no, once you score, it's the other team's ball. And then I can't remember where I was actually now. It was in Europe somewhere where, you don't check it at the top of the 3-point line or the key there. You check it sort of from the baseline, which was...
You have to inbound the ball?
Yeah, basically have to inbound the ball. So, that takes a little bit of getting used to when you're, when you're not sort of you're just not expecting it, really.
Yeah. You're trying to set up a
Yeah.
stack with guys you just met and be like, which way do you want to go?
Yeah.
Where do you want to fit?
And sometimes guys will kind of almost put pressure on that inbound pass where you're like it, to me, that's like a check where it's like, you don't know, you check it, but you don't really try to like steal it while you're in the middle of the check there. But that's it. You can't go to these cities and countries and then complain about the rules, because if that's what they play, then you're the one who has to adapt.
That's fascinating. And you got to use the screens. I mean, there's probably so many different styles, guys. There's screen heavy. I would imagine that if you're taking the ball from underneath, there's a lot of screens being set. You can't just like take the ball from underneath and pop out. It's never going to be open.
Right.
It is fascinating talking to you, to learn so much about why you're doing this. We learned so much about, the rules and the different things that occur with those old school methods on the court of different countries. This has been fascinating to talk to you and hear your story. But on top of that, we wish you so much success with all of this, because I think it's amazing. Every time you post something, I just watch it fully. I show my daughter. I'm like, look where he is. Look, he's doing this, because my daughter is 11 years old and plays. So it's really cool to see that she's playing and very organized, because basketball, I mean, there's so many club teams in Europe, and basketball in America is so organized. So they're drawing away from that pickup where you just have to figure it out on your own. And we talk about the difference between a lot of places. That pickup's still going strong in Europe, probably leads to a lot of that skill development that's occurring in some of these countries, when in America, everything's so organized, everything's so coached. It kind of dilutes it a little bit. So it's great to see that the world is still playing that old school way. And I love to see it. And I love hearing your story. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you very much for having me. It was a lot of fun talking with you, Kevin. And honestly, like, hearing your daughter interested is actually really satisfying for me, because I want boys and girls, men, women of all ages to feel that if anywhere I am, everybody is welcome to come out and play. And I don't want anyone to think this is just for boys or for men. It's for everybody. And I just had a clinic in Mexico City, and it was a really good 50-50 split of boys and girls. And it was awesome, because the girls are ballers too, man. And they want that opportunity to show it. And I was really, really happy with the turnout. So hopefully one day our paths will overlap and we'll be in the same city, and we can get some hoops together.
I was like, we definitely have to figure out a place and just meet up and play some pickup. My knee should be better by then, and we'll be able to see it, because I love what you're doing. So keep it up, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin.
Leigh Ellis, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on the Overseas Famous podcast. We will see you guys next week.